Welcome to the audio hotline. Today, we're going to be talking about this wireless XLR system from XVIVE. I've got no strings on me. I can just move around freely wherever I want to go. But today I'm going to be talking about the U3 system and the U3C system, which is the condenser version, meaning that it can supply 48 volts of phantom power. And the U3C version comes in at $219, while the regular dynamic U3 version comes in at $199. And actually, even though it looks like I have a handheld dynamic microphone in my hand right now, I actually do not. This is the Shure Beta 87A condenser handheld microphone. So I am using the U3C right now, going into the Zoom H6. And here's a little taste of what that looks like for you. Yum, yum. Since XVIVE did let me kind of do my thing with these for quite a while, I actually tested them out in so many ways. And one of the things that I was most excited to try out for this is actually at an event where I do some audio and video work. And at the end of this event, there is someone that goes up on stage and has usually just a long XLR cable going to their mic. And I was like, hey, at this event that I'm going to be working at, how about we try this system out? What do you think? So I did test it out that way, so I'm going to talk about my experience there. But I'll also tell you some basics about these systems, the specs, kind of what you can expect from each of them. And we will do some distance tests and everything. This is kind of something that's difficult to test out. It's more just based off of experience, and that's what I'm mostly going to speak to today. And full disclosure, right up front, there are some ups and downs with the U3 and U3C from XVIVE. They are good at a few things that I'll talk about today, but then they just are not good at some other things. And hopefully I can guide you on whether or not you should get this for your particular use case. But as I mentioned before, the main difference between the U3 and the U3C is that the U3 system is for dynamic microphones and the U3C is for condenser microphones. The U3C system can supply 12 volts or 48 volts of phantom power. And with these wireless systems, essentially the only thing that is different with them is the transmitter. The receiver is actually identical on both of them. So if you were thinking about getting a U3 and a U3C system, you wouldn't have to worry too much about which receiver goes with which. You can actually just select the channel and it will connect right up. And all that's really on them is a power switch as well as a channel selection button, and then just a micro USB charging port. Now on the transmitters, to be expected, they are slightly different. On the U3, you will have a mic and line switch option, as well as a power and mute switch option. And then of course the channel selection and the USB micro port for charging. And on the U3C, you'll have the option between 48 and 12 volts of phantom power. And like the U3, it does have the power and mute option, a channel selection, and of course, the micro USB charging port. And the cable that comes with this is actually capable of charging the receiver and transmitter at the same time, meaning that it starts with a USB-A, but actually splits into a dual USB micro cable. You will, of course, get some XVIVE stickers, but that is everything that you get with this wireless system, and that is everything that is on this wireless system. So now let's just briefly talk about the specs. We'll be testing out some of the claims in the specs as far as like distance goes, because some wireless systems can either undershoot what they say it's capable of or overshoot. But each of these operate on a frequency range of 2.4 gigahertz. They have an operating range of 90 feet line of sight, a frequency response of 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, a dynamic range of 110 dBA, and a transmitter battery life expectation of up to 5 hours. But one thing I do want to mention is battery life. I actually did a very extensive test. I have my notes pulled up. I took very intense notes for this battery test. So when I let the U3 run, and I did have it connected to a live mic and a live interface, and I would say they were about 30 feet away from each other, and I left my speakers on that whole time and just like basically had that microphone capturing that, so I knew that it was working and the battery was on and everything. So it was a very thorough test. But with the U3 receivers, they died within like a couple minutes of each other, and I got 508 minutes. That's 8 hours and 28 minutes. That's wild. And for my U3 transmitter, it actually did not die first, but I mean, once the receiver dies, you're done. But it actually lasted 515 minutes. 8 hours and 35 minutes. And then the U3C transmitter, which makes sense that it wouldn't last as long because it is providing phantom power. However, in the specs, it says up to 5 hours. And who knows? Maybe I got a good set. You know, who knows? But mine lasted 6 hours and 35 minutes. And when I recharged all of them from completely dead, it took about 2 hours. An extra few minutes for the U3C. But obviously, that battery life is incredible. But now that we've kind of went through all the details of the U3 and U3C, now we can start testing the distance and do a couple other tests. We're going to do a real quick distance test. Right now, I'm right on top of the receiver and the transmitters, as you can see. And now I'm just going to start walking backwards because it's got to be line of sight, obviously. So this is like 5 feet, 10 feet probably. And right now I got the SM58 and the AT2010 plugged in, just going into the Zoom H5. And yeah, I'm just going to do essentially 2 takes of this, one with the handheld condenser, one with the dynamic microphone, walking backwards. If anyone shows up, I'm going to look ridiculous. Not going to be the most stable video, but yeah, I'm walking. How far is this? 30 feet, I'd say. No, 40, probably 40 now. And then I'm about 50 feet away, and we're just going to keep talking. Hopefully one of these is going to cut out soon, because my arm's going to fall off, and my damn legs haven't worked this hard in 3 years. So, yeah, but I would say now I'm at about, 90 feet, maybe a little bit more. Let's keep trying in case we're still working. Sun's just blaring in my eyes. Amazing. It's amazing. How far am I? Oh, yeah. No, I'm a ways away. So, here we go. Still working. Hopefully, I don't know. I'm not monitoring it. But here we go. Yeah, so here's about 150 feet away at this point. So we'll see what happened. As I mentioned before, the distance for this is 90 feet line of sight. But I was curious and I couldn't help myself. What if we don't use line of sight? How far will it go? Will it go through walls? Let's try it. So I'm currently like a foot away from the Zoom H6 that has the receiver in it, and we're going to take off with the transmitter, a little vlog test. Here we go. I'm counting in my head. 20 feet here. Right now it's going through 2 walls. Now it would be going through 3 walls. And at this point I would be like 50 feet away, but going through 3 walls. Let's see if it actually did this. Since this is a wireless XLR system review, I figured I couldn't do a kitty purr test and have it really make sense, and that would probably piss some people off. So what I did is I involved my cats in a different way. I went and grabbed my trusty catnip that they absolutely love, highly recommend, and I just sprinkled some of it around the cables and the wireless system, and I let them decide what was better. And as you can see right here, Blue likes the Mogami cable a little bit more, but some other cats are coming out of the woodworks. I don't know if you saw that, but Keela came from behind the blanket ladder, so adorable. But let's see, she walks up. She is liking the wireless system, I think, but maybe it's just because Blue is quite literally making out with the Mogami cable right now. Who knows? But that Mogami cable is getting some love. I mean, I guess I could count that maybe as like a half point, but okay, there she goes. She likes the wireless system. She decides it. And just, I mean, Blue's making love to that cable. And the Mogami likes him back. So I actually grabbed a cheap XLR cable just to see, what they'd pick. And it looks like, Keela kind of picked the cheap XLR. She likes that. She's a little cheap. I'm just joking. I love her. She's the best. But Grim actually comes and picks the Mogami cable as well. But Blue's kind of given a little bit of love to that. Yep, the cheap one gets another point. So honestly, overall, XLR cables win. The cats decided. Now that we've talked about the basics of this wireless XLR system, now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my experiences with it, as well as kind of my opinion of it and who should get this, who should avoid it, so on and so forth. The first thing I do want to mention is that I've randomly plugged in the U3C into a couple microphones, specifically handheld condenser microphones from Sennheiser, and I would get this weird buzzing sound the whole time. I'll show you an example of that. As I mentioned before, the distance for this is 90 feet line of sight. I don't know if that's the unit that I have or if it's very consistent like that. And speaking of Sennheiser products, I am using the U3. This is a dynamic microphone. It's the E835, but the one that the U3 struggled with is the E865, as well as the E965. But generally speaking, when it comes to consistency and reliability, I've had much better experiences with the U3 over the U3C. In fact, when it comes to the little buzzing and everything in certain microphones that I've connected the U3C to, I've never had that issue with the U3. And I mean, yeah, it is a little less expensive than the U3C, and also the battery does last substantially longer. So I do think that overall, I do recommend the U3 over the U3C. But speaking of consistency and issues and everything, let's talk about my situation that I had with an event that I did. I'm in a high school auditorium, and I'd say the person that has the transmitter and Telefunken microphone that we were using at the time, I'd say with the transmitter to receiver, it was tops 40 feet away, which this has a 90-foot line of sight rating. And speaking of line of sight, maybe you're like, oh, well, if they're up on stage and you're down a little bit lower, maybe there was something interrupting it, you know? So no, actually, I used a cable to get up on a light stand where I had this little wireless system clamped up. So the transmitter and receiver were basically just level with each other. Now let me go back for just 1 second. Before this event started, I had this setup already done, and I went up on stage where the speaker was going to be, and I started talking. There were no dropouts, no issues whatsoever, no crackling. It was great. I even went behind a little curtain, behind a little wall, steel nailing it. It was killing it. And I had no worries about using it. I thought it was going to be great. Now to go back to the event. I'm assuming this is what happened, and I did test it out more. But as the person started to speak and everything, it was just dropping out like crazy, crackling like crazy. We had to hurry and get a long XLR cable to him. It was a nightmare. And quite frankly, I was a little bit pissed off at XVIVE. I was like, how you do me like this? But then I realized that earlier, the lighting people for the actual school had shown up, and they turned their little mixer on. And they have wireless microphones that they weren't using, but they're still active that are up on the stage. And so what I'm assuming is that this was a situation of interference. And even though we cycled through the different channels very quickly and tried that, and nothing worked, I'm assuming that their much stronger wireless system had to be what was interfering with ours, considering that earlier in the day it worked fine. So at other schools where we did this event, the exact same thing happened. So here's what I'm going to say. If you are in a very controlled environment and you are the only wireless system around, you'd be good to use these. Like if you do audio for a church, or if you're doing an event at a location where they don't have any wireless stuff around, good to go. But if you are a touring musician and from night to night you want to have a wireless setup, but you don't know if that place might already have, wireless speakers or wireless microphones or whatever, I would probably avoid this. And that kind of brings me to what I think this setup is best for. It probably would be best for like run and gun interview, like documentary style work. In a studio like this, I mean, running a little cable isn't a big deal. If you find it inconvenient and you want to, create a wireless link from one thing to another, go for it. Like this could definitely do it in a controlled environment. And I understand that $200 for a wireless setup is very inexpensive. And I think that kind of shows when it comes to that whole interference thing. But overall, for very basic wireless needs, I think that this could be okay. It can be a little finicky. It can be a little unreliable. Now, I guess if you do have like a studio setup where for whatever reason you have to be kind of far away from your interface or mixer, then yeah, like this could work. But I do worry about other interference issues happening. I have tried getting some issues like with my phone or certain other things to pop up, and I haven't had an issue. The only other issue that I've had is with other wireless systems being on. So overall, I don't really recommend this system to everyone, but if you fit in the, circumstances that I said, then yeah, I think that it's fine. Now, the way that I rate products on the audio hotline is by using the BBSAR. It's something that Bark and I from Obscure Mics came up with. It's a rating system from 0 to 10. I'll put it up on the screen right now. But the rating that I give the U3C is a 5, and the U3 I give a 5.5. So I don't think that these products are not worth buying. I think it just depends on what you're going to be using them for. And it should seem straightforward because you'd just be using them for wireless XLR, but I mean, you know, the actual use cases. But thank you all for watching this review of the XVIVE U3 and U3C. I want to thank XVIVE for sending these products over for review. But I mostly want to thank all of the subscribers and all of the members of the Audio Hotline. You are just the best people on the face of the earth, and everyone knows it, and they're jealous of you. They love you, I think. They're jealous, though. They are. But once again, thank you all for watching the Audio Hotline. I'll see you audio nerds next time. I can still talk into the mic over here, and I'm not even on camera. An XLR cable would reach, though, so whatever.